The screen is black. For a moment, there is only sound. Not music. Sound. The metallic screech of a worn-out hinge. The slow, labored drip of water into a puddle. A low, pervasive hum of machinery pushed to its limit. The groan of aging metal, a ship talking in its sleep. Then a sliver of blinding light. A porthole, crusted with salt, is wiped roughly with a greasy cloth. Through the distorted glass, the view is a nightmare of peace. The endless, flat blue of the Pacific Ocean under a ruthless sun. And on the horizon, a green, hazy silhouette. Guam, America. Pull back. The man wiping the porthole is not a sailor. His hands are too clean, his eyes, behind thick glasses, are ringed with the fatigue of a scholar, not a deckhand. He is Sergei, 22 years old. He stares at the island not with longing, but with a technician's cold calculation. He measures distance, wind direction, signal propagation. A deafening, shuddering clang erupts directly above him, shaking the entire compartment. Rust dust sifts from the ceiling. Sergei does not flinch. This is normal. This is part of the show. He turns and walks not up to the deck, but deeper into the ship's belly. He passes through a door that looks like any other, grimy and metal. But it is heavier. It seals with a sigh of pressurized air. The world changes. The groan of the ship is muted here, replaced by a higher frequency choir, the whisper of cooling fans, the soft whir of spooling magnetic tape, the steady ping of a directional finder. The air is cold, sterile. Banks of equipment glow with rows of amber and green eyes. This is the brain. The bridge was a mask. This is the face. In the center, motionless, stands Captain Alexei Volkov. He is not looking at the machines. He is listening. A single cushioned headphone is pressed to one ear. His face is a landscape of concentration. He is not hearing noise. He is reading a symphony of betrayal from the air itself. On the main console, a reel-to-reel tape recorder is silently capturing the voices. American voices. Young, bored, terrified, professional. Alpha Tango Flight. You are cleared for runway 24 left. Winds at 15. Roger, Control. Hey, Mike, you buying the first round at the O Club tonight or what? Negative, negative. We have confirmed SAM radar activation at Sector Echo 7. Request immediate change of course. The intel was wrong, God damn it. Each voice is a thread. Volkov's mind is the loom, weaving them into a tapestry of American power and American vulnerability. His first officer, Borodin, a bear of a man with knuckles like weathered stone, enters. He carries the stench of diesel and genuine sweat, a smell alien in this clean room. The men are getting restless, Alexei Ilyich. Morozov got into a fight with the cook over the last of the real coffee. A real fight. Blood on the mess deck. Volkov does not remove the headphone. And? I broke it up. Told them they fight like women. But the anger, it's not about coffee. It is about time, Volkov says, his voice low and even. We have been a broken ship for 87 days. The longest performance of our lives. Even actors get an intermission. We do not. Suddenly, a new light flashes on the console. A soft, insistent red. Not an alarm, a notification. Sergei, now at his station, stiffens. He has been monitoring a specific, delicate frequency, a back channel used by U.S. Navy logistics. The pattern has changed. Captain, Sergei's voice is tight, too high. The USS Wiley, the destroyer, its scheduled patrol, they've amended the coordinates. Significantly. Volkov finally turns. His movement is economical, precise. He leans over Sergei's shoulder. The young man flinches, as if expecting a blow. On the chart, The new projected path of the American warship is a red line. It doesn't just pass near them. It curves. It aims directly for their patch of ocean, their claimed drift. It could be a coincidence, Sergei whispers, not believing it himself. Coincidence is a luxury of safe men, Volkov replies. How long? At current speed, 36 hours. Maybe less if they increase. A silence fills the room, heavier than the ocean outside. The only sound is the relentless, hungry whisper of the tapes, consuming American secrets. Volkov straightens up. He looks at Borodin. There is no fear in his eyes. Only a deep, weary calculation. Stage 2 of the breakdown, he says. We knew this would come. The curious neighbor coming to see if the sick old man in the house needs help. Borodin grunts. Stage 2 requires the main circulating pump to fail. That means real flooding in the lower bilge. Knee-deep, icy water. For show. For survival, Volkov corrects him. Tell the men, and Borodin, let Morozov and the cook have their fight. Let them bloody each other's noses. Let the American satellites or their listening planes hear the shouts, the crashes. A demoralized, fractious crew on a dying ship is not a threat. It is a tragedy. We must be a tragedy, not a mystery. He turns back to the console, to the red line on the chart. The mask is holding, but the pressure outside the mask is increasing. The first true test is not a technical failure, but a warship's deliberate, probing course. In the sterile light, Volkov puts the headphone back to his ear. The voices continue. A pilot is complaining about the food in the officer's mess. Volkov listens, his face a impassive monument. He is building a wall of noise, of illusion, of rust and failure and petty human squabbles to hold back the tide of American curiosity represented by that red line on the map. The Ajax drifts. Its heart of steel and wire beats on, a frantic, secret rhythm beneath a corpse's calm chest. The performance has entered a new, more dangerous act, and the audience, armed with sonar and radar and suspicion, is now moving in for a closer look. The ocean does not care about secrets. It transmits them. Aboard the USS Wiley, the hum is different. It is the sound of power, well-fed and confident. The decks are clean. The radars spin with lazy, predatory grace. In the Combat Information Center, the light is a soft, tactical blue. Lieutenant Commander James Holt studies his main screen. On it, a digital blip labeled MV Ajax SOV sits motionless in a vast field of empty blue. For weeks, it has been a footnote, a navigational curiosity. Now Holt's finger traces the new intercept data just arrived from Fleet Intelligence Guam. A fragment of an anomalous signal, a ghost of a transmission, geolocated to this sector. The timing coincides with the Wiley's new patrol vector. Coincidence is a word not found in Holt's vocabulary. He picks up a handset, his voice crisp in the conditioned air. Bridge, CIC. Recommend we come to bearing 270, increase speed to 15 knots. Let's go say hello to our stranded Soviet friends, and have the deck crew prepare a boarding party kit, just in case we need to offer assistance. On the Ajax, the performance becomes physical. Deep in the ship's bowels, in a space usually dry, seawater now sloshes around the knees of 3 crewmen. The air is frigid and reeks of salt and stagnant bilge. This is no illusion. To fake a catastrophic pump failure, they had to sabotage their own system. The water is real. The cold is a bone ache. The men, led by the burly Morozov, wrestle with a fake, a pristine pump part made to look burnt out, while the actual vital machinery hums securely behind a false bulkhead inches away. Every curse they shout as the icy water bites is genuine. Up on the deck, under the blinding sun, the drama is more theatrical. Two sailors, their faces flushed with simulated rage, shout at each other in Russian over a crate of visibly rotten potatoes. One throws a punch that misses deliberately by a wide margin. The other stumbles back, knocking over a bucket of filthy water. To an observer from the Wiley, it is a perfect tableau of neglect and disorder. Inside the brain of the ship, the atmosphere is one of controlled, silent panic. Sergei is a raw nerve. He monitors the Wiley's approach not through sound, but through its electronic footprint. The dense, powerful radar pulses that now wash over the Ajax every 12 seconds, feeling its shape, probing its mass. Each pulse is a searchlight in the fog. He has increased speed, Sergei reports, his voice thin. He is not on a patrol vector. He is on an intercept course, bearing direct. Captain Volkov stands at the periscope, a crude, authentic-looking tube retrofitted to peer from a deck housing. Through it, he watches the horizon. Then, the smudge appears. A sharp, gray prow cutting the water with purpose. The Wiley is beautiful and deadly, a knife compared to the Ajax's rusty spoon. Volkov's mind races through scenarios. A direct boarding is unlikely in international waters, but not impossible. A goodwill inspection, citing maritime safety concerns, is the real danger. They would find the false walls, the hidden compartments, in under an hour. He turns from the scope. His orders are delivered softly, each word a calculated brick in a defensive wall. Borodin, have the men on deck start arguing over the lifeboats, make one appear jammed. A ship that cannot save itself is a pitiful sight. It invites pity, not suspicion. Sergei, I want you to create a minor, intermittent short in our own external running lights. Make them flicker erratically at dusk. A dying ship has a dying heartbeat. Everyone else, remember your roles. You are not spies. You are tired, frustrated, stupid men on a worthless bucket. Your only secret is your incompetence. Wear it with pride. As dusk bleeds into the ocean, the two ships occupy the same square of water. The Wiley slows to a respectful but menacing distance of 500 yards. A spotlight pierces the gathering gloom, sweeping over the Ajax's scarred hull, lingering on the sailors who now pretend to desperately and clumsily work on a lifeboat davit. On the Wiley's bridge, Holt watches through powerful binoculars. He sees the flickering lights, the chaotic activity, the water-stained hull. It all fits the picture. And yet, something in the sheer consistency of the decay bothers him. It feels staged. The arguments seem just a little too loud, the panic just a touch too performative. He lowers the binoculars. "Signalman," Holt says, "send a message by lamp. USS Wiley to MV Ajax. Do you require assistance?" On the Ajax's darkened bridge, the Morse code light stabs through the night. The message is decoded by a sailor who is, in fact, a naval linguist. He relays it to Volkov. Volkov takes a deliberate breath. This is the first spoken contact. The tone must be perfect. A mix of shame, defiance, and pathetic gratitude. He steps onto the wing of the bridge, a lone, slumped figure, in the uneven glow of the faulty lights. He picks up their own, much weaker signal lamp. His response is slow, clumsy, as if operated by numb fingers. The light stutters out the reply in Russian, then in broken English. "MV Ajax to U.S. warship. We are grateful. Our pump is broken. We have flooding. Our crew is managing. We wait for tow from neutral flag. Thank you. No assistance required." On the Wiley, Holt reads the message. Neutral tow. It's the standard deflection. Plausible. He raises the binoculars again, focusing on the figure on the bridge. Even at this distance, in the poor light, the posture is wrong. The man is slumped, but the set of his shoulders is not one of defeat. It is one of immense, focused burden. This is not a defeated captain. This is a man holding a mountain on his back. "Helm," Holt says, not taking his eyes off Volkov. "Bring us around. Station keeping, parallel course, 300 yards. We'll keep them company tonight. For safety. And raise command. Tell them the Ajax is interesting. Request permission for a closer inspection of this flooding at first light." The message is sent. The silence that follows is not empty. It is thick with unspoken threat. Aboard the Ajax, in the Humming Corps, the crew receives the intercept of the Wiley's transmission to Guam. The words, "closer inspection at first light," hang in the cold air like a death sentence. Volkov looks at the faces around him, pale in the instrument glow. Fear is now their companion. He can use this. He speaks, his voice cutting through the dread. "They see a broken ship, so we must break further. At 0400 we will have an engine room fire. Contained, smoky, but visible. It will explain any unusual heat signatures, any panic. We will become not just a tragedy, but a liability. A ship about to sink or burn. Too dangerous to board." He turns to the chart. The red line of the Wiley is now a circle, drawn tightly around them. They are caught in a spotlight, and the only way out is to set their own stage on fire. Outside, the vast Pacific night presses in. Two ships, locked in a silent, desperate pantomime. One holds the power of guns and law. The other holds the power of a lie, growing more fragile with every passing hour. The curtain is up. The audience is no longer watching from a distance. It is in the front row, leaning in, and the actor's mask is beginning to slip under the sweat. Fire, even a controlled one, has a conscience. It betrays. At 0400, a thick, greasy plume of smoke, perfectly calibrated to look like burning oil and insulation, billows from the Ajax's auxiliary exhaust vent. On the Wiley's bridge, alarms sound softly. Thermal cameras paint a bright bloom of orange against the cool blue hull of the Soviet ship. Lieutenant Commander Holt observes, his jaw tight. "A fire changes everything. It turns a curiosity into a potential humanitarian disaster. It also makes any hostile intent unthinkable. The perfect shield." Below, in the Ajax's real engine room, a space hidden behind the theatrical inferno, the heat is stifling, but from overworked machinery, not flames. Crewmen, faces smeared with authentic grease and synthetic soot, move with a tense, choreographed urgency. They are not fighting a fire. They are performing an opera of distress. Their shouts, amplified through pipes to the deck, are a symphony of panic in Russian. But fire is a demanding actor. A stray ember from the chemical smoke pots finds a real deposit of oil-soaked rags, forgotten in a corner of the staged area. Real flame licks at a cable conduit. For 60 terrifying seconds, the performance threatens to become a catastrophe. It is Borodin who smothers it with a blanket, his arms burning, his teeth gritted in a silent scream. The lie is preserved, but at the cost of genuine pain. The wound on Borodin's forearm, bandaged later, is a raw, red testament to the price of the mask. The fire does its job. The Wiley holds its distance, a vigilant spectator. A medical offer is signaled. Volkov, from his bridge, declines with exaggerated grim gratitude. The message: "We are handling our own misery, but the fire's true damage is internal. It burns away the last remnants of routine." What follows is not a day, but a descent. Time ceases to have meaning marked by clocks. It is measured in shifts, in the rotation of the Wiley's watch, in the diminishing stores of food. The canned meat is gone. Now it is hardtack and thin broth. The coffee is a bitter, burnt grain substitute. The fresh water is rationed to a metallic-tasting liter a day. The ship becomes a prison of the mind. The sailors, deprived of real work, succumb to a listless torpor. They play the same card game for the 1,000th time, the cards soft and greasy. They stare at the same patch of rust on the wall, watching it grow. One of the younger listeners, a gifted cryptographer named Kirsanov, begins to have conversations with the voices on the tapes. He answers them in whispered English, correcting a pilot's grammar, offering sympathy for a lost bomber. When Sergei finds him, Kirsanov is weeping silently, his head on the console, as a lonely American radar operator sings a off-key version of House of the Rising Sun to stay awake. Volkov sees the fracture lines spreading through his crew like cracks in Arctic ice. He makes a decision. He gathers everyone, all 47 men, in the largest open space, the fake cargo hold. He stands before them, not as a captain of a warship, but as a curator of a dying, shared dream. He does not speak of motherland or glory. He speaks of the silence. They listen to our distress signals, Volkov says, his voice echoing in the cavernous dark hold. They hear our fake fights, our simulated fires. They think they hear our despair. But they are deaf to our real silence, the silence in here. He taps his temple. That silence is our weapon. When a man is truly broken, he makes noise. He begs. He surrenders. We are not making that noise. Our silence is a wall. And every hour you hold your nerve, you add a brick to that wall. It is a good speech. It works for a day. But the ocean has a deeper psychology. The isolation becomes ontological. The men start to recognize the American pilots not as targets, but as ghosts. They know the voice of a cocky lieutenant called Jester, who always hums before a bombing run. They know the nervous, meticulous flight engineer on a KC-135 tanker. They chart the emotional arcs of men they will never see. And then, one evening, they intercept an emergency transmission. A B-52, call sign Echo 29er, is hit over Haiphong. The crew's voices, 5 of them, are a stark, horrifying counterpoint to the usual chatter. There is procedure at first, then desperation, then a prayer, then a scream that is cut off into a hiss of static. The silence in the Ajax's operations room is absolute and different. It is not the silence of duty. It is the silence of complicity. They had listened to these men's lives for weeks, and now they have listened to their deaths. They were auditors of a slaughter, and the blood feels on their hands. Sergei finds Volkov later, in his small cabin, staring at a photograph of his wife and daughter in Leningrad. "We knew them," Sergei says, his voice hollow. "The navigator. He had a newborn. He talked about it once to his co-pilot. We have that on tape too." Volkov does not look up from the photograph. "Do not give them names," he says. But the command lacks conviction. It is the plea of a man who is also starting to hear the names. The storm arrives not from the sky, but from within Morozov. The brute sailor, the man of action, finally snaps from inaction. He corners Kirsanov, the fragile listener, near the galley. "You and your ghosts," Morozov snarls, his breath foul. "You sit in your cool room and listen to them die. Do you cheer? Do you take notes for your report? Is my suffering, my friend's burned arm, worth the last words of an American pilot?" He shoves Kirsanov against a bulkhead. The sound is a sickening thud. It brings others running. It is not a staged fight. It is real, feral, and over in seconds. But it leaves a new, deeper schism. The shared fiction of the crew is shattered. They are no longer actors playing parts. They are broken men, and their enemy is no longer just the ship on the horizon, but the man next to them. Volkov isolates Morozov, not as punishment, but as triage. The infection of rage must be contained. That night, as the Ajax drifts and the Wily keeps its patient, deadly vigil, Volkov reviews the latest intelligence digest for Moscow. It is filled with targeting data, fuel loads, squadron morale assessments, all gleaned from the whispers of the dying men. He now feels he knows. The product is pristine. The cost is written on the faces of his crew, in Borodin's burn, in Kirsanov's vacant eyes, in the animal fear he now sees in everyone. He sends the transmission. The data flows to the silent, distant receiver, a stream of secrets pulled from the ether. But for the first time, the act feels not like a victory, but like a theft. He is stealing the last words of the dead and selling them to keep his own ghost ship afloat. The storm outside is quiet. The storm inside is now a hurricane. And Captain Volkov stands at its eye, holding the center, feeling the walls of his own silence beginning to strain and groan. The mission is a success. The men are crumbling. And the curious neighbor still watches, waiting for the walls to fall. The Pacific does not give warnings. It gives weather. A line of bruised purple cloud gathers on the horizon at dusk. Not a storm for the history books, but a mean, squally thing. A tempest of inconvenience. Aboard the Wily, it is a minor navigational note. Aboard the Ajax, a creaking antique, it is an existential threat. The wind comes first, a rising moan in the rigging of the fake aerials. Then the rain, horizontal and cold, scouring the decks. The ship, designed for stability and calm disguise, begins to move. Not the gentle roll of the doldrums, but a deep, sickening corkscrew motion. In the hidden operations room, a cup of cold tea slides off a console and shatters on the deck. The first tangible casualty. Volkov is on the bridge, his hands white-knuckled on the rail. He is not fighting the storm. He is riding it, letting the Ajax behave exactly as it should. A poorly maintained, barely seaworthy tub on the verge of foundering. Each dramatic lurch sells the lie. Through the sheeting rain, he can barely see the Wily's navigation lights, haloed and blurred, holding position at a safer distance. They are watching, as always. Below, in the sanctum, the real crisis brews. The ship's crown jewel, its reason for existence, is not a machine, but an ear. A complex array of directional antennas disguised as derrick booms and cargo cranes on the main deck. Their skeletal forms, treacherously high, are now whipping through violent arcs against the black sky. They were built to listen, not to survive a gale. Sergei is monitoring their integrity from his station. A diagnostic screen shows stress load graphs for each array. The primary high-frequency intercept antenna, Array Alpha, is represented by a green line. As a particularly deep roll shakes the ship to its keel, the line trembles, spikes into yellow, then, catastrophically, flashes a solid, screaming red. An alarm chirps, soft but insistent, lost in the storm's roar. Alpha Array, Sergei says, his voice flat with disbelief. Structural integrity failure. Bearing assembly is compromised. We've lost 70% of our coverage on the primary military bands. The room seems to freeze, the storm silenced by the void this news creates. The ear has gone deaf. They are adrift, blind, in the very waters they were sent to observe. All that remains is the fragile, crumbling mask. Volkov descends into the chaos, water dripping from his oilskin. He reads the screen. His face is granite. Can it be repaired? Sergei consults a schematic. The failure is in the upper swivel joint. Externally accessible. But, Captain, it's 30 feet up, on the mainmast, in this. A repair is a violation of the first law of their existence. Never reveal the true purpose of any external fitting. To touch that antenna is to admit it is more than rusted steel. We have no choice, Volkov says. The mission is the heart. The antenna is its artery. Borodin, Sergei, suit up. You will go. Make it look like emergency rigging repair. Save the crane, not the antenna. Borodin, his burned arm barely healed, nods, a soldier's acceptance. Sergei looks like he might be sick. The theoretical has just become a vertical climb into a black, wet hell. They emerge on the storm-lashed deck at 0200. The world is a cacophony of screaming wind, crashing waves, and driving rain. They are harnessed, but the lines are for show. Standard maritime safety. Their tools are hidden in a sack, genuine wrenches, and a sealed component from the secret stores, painted to look old. The climb is a nightmare. The metal rungs of the mast are slick with rain and salt. The ship bucks beneath them like a terrified animal. Sergei freezes halfway up, clinging as a wave crashes over the bow, submerging the deck below in a white fury. Borodin below him shouts a raw, wordless roar that is torn away by the wind. It is not encouragement. It is a command from the primal part of the brain that refuses to die. They reach the platform. The antenna array is a wild, thrashing beast. The damaged joint is a shriek of metal on metal. Borodin, with his massive strength, wedges himself against a support. He shines a waterproof torch, its beam cutting a frail tunnel through the rain. Here! Now, boy! Now! Sergei fumbles with the component. His fingers are numb. The wind tries to pluck the small, vital piece from his hands. He drops a wrench. It cartwheels down into the Black Sea. He works, blind with spray and panic, guided by Borodin's snarled commands. For 3 minutes, they fight. And for 3 minutes, they are exposed. On the bridge of the Wiley, a young ensign monitoring the radar and thermal imagers frowns. Sir, I've got 2 hotspots on the Ajax, topside, midmast, consistent with body heat. Lieutenant Commander Holt moves to the screen. The storm scrambles most signals, but the thermal signature is clear. 2 bright, human-shaped blobs of white and yellow, clinging to the superstructure. In the middle of a storm that has every right-hand man battened down. They are not securing loose cargo. They are working on a specific, elevated piece of equipment. Zoom and record, Holt says, a slow smile touching his lips. The curtain has been pulled back, just an inch. What are you so desperate to save, Captain? Above, a surge of the ship coincides with a final, brutal gust. Borodin's boot slips on the wet grating. He scrambles for a handhold, his harness snapping taut. The movement is sudden, violent. The torch in his hand is flung loose. It does not fall into the sea. It arcs downwards and inwards, striking the deck housing of a secondary disguised parabolic dish with a loud metallic clang before bouncing into the scuppers. The light goes out. On the platform, Sergei rams the new component home. It's in. Good. Go down, Borodin yells. But the damage is done. Not to the antenna, to the disguise. The fallen torch has struck a precise glancing blow on a painted aluminum dome, designed to look like a ventilation cap. A long, silver scratch now gleams against the dull, weathered paint. In daylight, it will be a scar. A fresh metallic scar on decades-old rust. A lie, scratched raw to show the truth beneath. The two men scramble down, collapsing onto the heaving deck. They are alive. The antenna will work. They have, they believe, saved the mission. Back inside, shaking, shedding water like dogs, they report to Volkov. "The array is secure, Captain," Borodin gasps. Sergei, haunted, adds, "We lost a torch. It fell." "Where?" "Port side, near the small dome on Housing 4. Volkov closes his eyes. He knows the housing. He knows the paint. He knows what a fresh metallic strike will look like under the scrutiny of high-powered lenses. The repair was a success that may have doomed them. They have traded a deaf ear for a glowing, visible brand on their skin. As the storm begins to abate, a false dawn, lightening the raging gray to a sickly mauve, the wily remains. Patient, watching. The game has changed. Holt now has a videotape of desperate men performing critical repairs in a hurricane, and a specific location to examine at first light. The Ajax has stopped the bleeding of its ear, but in doing so it has cut its own face, and the blood is a shimmering silver beacon in the coming morning. The final act is no longer about maintaining a lie. It is about surviving its exposure. The storm outside is passing. The storm of consequence is just on the horizon, clear, cold, and inevitable. Dawn did not break. It crept in, gray and sickly, revealing the aftermath of the storm and the permanence of their trap. On the bridge of the Wily, the atmosphere was no longer one of curiosity, but of focused, professional certainty. Lieutenant Commander Holt held a thermal printout in his hand. It showed the two bright figures on the mast. On a high-resolution monitor, a digital zoom image of the Ajax's portside housing was frozen. A technician's cursor circled a thin, glaringly bright line against the dull brown. The scratch. "That's not rust," Holt said quietly. "That's fresh metal, aluminum or high-grade steel. They were protecting an asset, not repairing a hulk." He turned to his communications officer. "Request from command is upgraded. We no longer require permission for a safety inspection. We now have probable cause for a suspicion of espionage activities under international maritime law. Request armed boarding party authorization. And get me a feed from the overhead asset. I want eyes on that deck every second." The request was sent, encoded, and flown at the speed of light to Guam. The machine of American military protocol, slow to stir, was now in motion. Aboard the Ajax, the air was thick with the smell of wet rust, fear, and burnt coffee. In the operations room, Sergei had restored the primary array. The voices of America flooded back in, but one voice was all they needed. "Captain," the linguist said, his face bloodless. "Wiley to command. They have cited probable cause. They are requesting armed boarding party authorization. The request is being processed." The finality of the words landed like a physical blow. An armed boarding was not an inspection. It was an autopsy. They would peel the ship apart. They would find everything. The men would be prisoners, or worse. The mission would be a public, humiliating failure, a propaganda gift to the enemy. Volkov looked at the faces around him. Borodin, his massive frame hunched with fatigue and pain. Sergei, hollow-eyed, trembling from the night's climb. Kirsanov, lost somewhere behind his own eyes. The sailors, their morale long since eroded to dust. He saw not a crew, but a collection of breaking points. He had one move left. It was not in any official manual. It was a choice between two betrayals. All senior listeners and Borodin with me. "Now," he said, his voice stripped of all inflection. They gathered in his cabin, the sacred space. Volkov did not sit. He laid a single classified folder on his small desk. It was labeled in Cyrillic, Contingency Omega, the myth of a toe from a neutral flag. The Americans will be here in less than 2 hours, Volkov stated. They will board us. They will find you. They will find this. He gestured to the ship around them. There will be no war over us. Moscow will disavow us. We will be spies in forgotten cells, or bodies in an accidental fire. No one spoke. The truth required no commentary. Contingency Omega is not a rescue, Volkov continued. It is a cleansing. It is scuttling charges in the bilge, set to destroy the core equipment and the cryptographic machines. It leaves the outer shell. A tragic, accidental sinking of a derelict ship after a storm. The crew is evacuated to lifeboats, picked up by the neutral party that never arrives. We vanish. The mission's secrets are protected. Borodin's voice was a graveled whisper. The lifeboats will not hold in open ocean for more than a day. The neutral party is a fiction. Omega is a suicide note. It is a choice of endings, Volkov corrected, his gaze locking with each man's. One ends with us in chains, our work used to bomb more Vietnamese villages, more pilots we know by name. The other ends with us choosing our silence, protecting what we heard, denying them the final victory of seeing how we listened. He let the horror hang in the air. Then he shifted. There is a third option, he said. A real one. We do not scuttle the evidence. We destroy it. He opened the folder. Inside were not schematics for scuttling, but for a controlled internal incendiary event in the operations room itself. A fire hot enough to melt tape reels, circuitry, and code books into a single, unrecognizable slag. It would leave the outer ship intact, but its brain would be ash. But the Americans will still board, Sergei said, confused. They will find us. They will find a crew of half-starved, terrified merchant sailors whose ship suffered an electrical fire after the storm, Volkov said. A new, terrifying plan crystallizing in his words. They will find a burned-out compartment that used to hold, what? Our poor radio? Our galley microwave? Who can tell in such a rusted wreck? They will find nothing of value, only a sad, damaged hulk. Our story remains. We cling to it, through the interrogation. We are stupid, unlucky sailors. The burned compartment is our tragedy, not our secret. And the equipment? The tapes? Borodin asked. We burn them, ourselves. Now. We erase the only thing that proves we are more than we seem. We sacrifice the heart to save the body. It was a staggering gamble. It meant destroying the priceless intelligence, the very reason for their suffering. It meant facing interrogation without a safety net. It meant trusting that the lie, even scarred and burned, was stronger than the truth. We have 40 minutes, Volkov said. We vote. Omega Scuttle, with its finality, or the burn, and we take our chances with the Americans' questions. The vote was not unanimous, but it was decisive. They chose the burn. What followed was a frantic, silent funeral. Reels of tape, thousands of hours of American voices, were fed into a makeshift incinerator in the engine room's hottest furnace. Cryptographic machines were smashed with sledgehammers, their pieces scattered into the melting pile. Circuit boards crackled and smoked. The history they had gathered dissolved into acrid black smoke that they vented carefully, disguised as post-storm steam. At 0700, as they were dumping the last ashes, the linguist called out, his voice cracking. Wiley has received authorization. They are lowering a boat. Armed party. ETA 20 minutes. Volkov gave the final order. Borodin, the fire. Make it real. Borodin nodded. In the stripped clean operations room, he triggered the incendiary charges. They were not explosives, but chemical. With a whoosh of consuming heat, the room became an inferno, contained by its own steel walls, but glowing like a forge. The alarm bells rang, real ones this time. The crew erupted onto the deck, screaming "Fire" in Russian and broken English, pointing frantically at the black smoke now pouring from a specific, nondescript hatch. On the Wiley, Holt watched the new plume of smoke. He saw the genuine panic. He saw the crew, looking like scarecrows, throwing buckets of water in a pathetic, disorganized chain. His certainty wavered for a fraction of a second. Was this another performance? Or had the storm-pummeled wreck finally succumbed? The American boarding boat with 6 armed Marines slowed its approach, wary. The Ajax was now visibly stricken, burning, a hazard. Volkov stood at the rail, facing the boat. He raised a megaphone, his face smudged with real soot. "Fire! No board! Unsafe!" he shouted. The perfect, panicked captain of a doomed ship. Holt, on his bridge, listened. He looked at the thermal image. The heat signature from the fire was intense, localized, and real. He looked at the scratch on the housing, now just one more detail on a dying ship. He made his call. He was a soldier, not a pirate. His priority was the safety of his men, not boarding a potential death trap. "Recall the boarding party," Holt said, the words tasting of ashes. "Stand by at a distance. Monitor. If they abandon ship, we will pick them up. If they sink, we will record the coordinates." The boat turned back. On the deck of the Ajax, the men watched it go. They continued their charade of fighting the fire, which would burn itself out in the sealed compartment. The danger had passed. They were saved by the very disaster they had created. Volkov looked at his crew, then at the retreating American warship, and finally at the endless, neutral ocean. They had won. They had preserved the lie. They were still ghosts. But as the adrenaline faded, a deeper truth settled over him, colder than the ocean floor. They had sacrificed their purpose to save their skins. They were no longer spies. They were merely a secret, a hollow, rusting shell adrift with a burned-out center, listening to nothing but the sound of their own survival. The mission was over. All that remained was the long, silent voyage home, carrying nothing but the weight of what they had heard, and the heavier weight of what they had destroyed to forget it. The victory was flawless, and it tasted of absolutely nothing.